Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is the last session of this year, which we are having as part of our course. And I'm delighted that we are having our guest, as I have announced earlier, who's going to speak about a more praxis-related topic. As you all know, we have dealt with a lot of theoretical frames such as development, theories of development, theories of nature, society conceptions, worldviews on sustainability. And I want to use the session of today to summarize the findings and discussions in terms of key points and first and foremost allow Stefan to later on transfer some of these ideas into more praxis-related questions of political science. So the structure of today is going to be an introduction to the Hopwood text with some further thoughts, but this will be rather brief. And afterwards, I'm going to introduce our guest lecturer who's going to give the talk for the rest of the session. And we both hope for very fruitful debates, and I hope you also are going to have a lot of questions as well. Let me start as usual. Give me a short sign of agreement that you can hear and properly see me. Kevin and Serkan. Great, thank you. So let us just start. As I've said, the beginning is going by me just to summarize the different angles of theory development which we have discussed and to somehow bring them together. Those who wanna have the text at hand and don't have it, you find it on the top right to download, Hopwood et al. 2005. This is the text what we are basically dealing with, and I'm going to provide some insight and some hypothesis regarding the conclusions of the text as well. If you have any questions, as usual, do not hesitate to just raise your hand. So we have discussed basically three different frames of development theories. There has been the modernization theory, the world system theory, of which the dependency theory is one part, or a very prominent part, at least in the past. As we have discussed, the modernization theory is the dominant view of today on like how to measure development. There are others as well, as reflected by the worldviews. Contrary to the modernization theory, the world system theory still exists, and the dependency theory actually died out at the end of the 80s. And there's a broad variety of globalization theories. So there, the one-part concept of sustainable development, about which we are going to discuss today, is already brought in perspectives on how to define this. The four worldviews actually image this, and this is insofar of interest as we are going to see that these different worldviews are continuing when we are looking at the different perspectives or discourses on sustainable development. So the four worldviews reflect kind of a different interpretation of social reality, and as in terms of the modernization theory, the market liberalists' view is the most prominent one by now, at least since the late 90s. So when we are looking at the history of sustainable development, we find that what is called the Promethean view is deeply rooted in the debate from the very beginning. So there is that what can also be called technical progression viewpoint, the view that mankind actually is able to overcome every obstacle by technological development. So technology and this type of development seen as the solution for everything, and this we can actually trace back in history to the development of modern science by Bacon in the 17th and 18th century, so since the start of the industrialization. The concept sustainable development itself actually was first used by the World Conservation Strategy in 1980 and prominently reconsidered and spread out by the Brundtland Report in 1987, by which the idea of an intergeneration justice became the central part of the debate on sustainable development. So Brundtland actually argued about what he called in his report about the sustainable growth. There was not such a concept as sustainable development, but the idea already was there to form it as a static concept. So in these times, since 1980, sustainable development was kind of a technical concept, which later on became a contested concept in the political sphere. We have discussed it in the past. Hermann Daly, who is a representative of the steady state economy with his claim to looking for qualitative growth instead of quantitative growth, criticized this quite early by saying that sustainable growth would be thought stopping, as the concept rather focuses on continuing as we do now, but taking into consideration ideas of sustainability, which is basically measured by the bioenvironmentalist view in terms of like biological conservationist considerations during the growth process of the societies. And the Brundtland report also brought on the international table the debate on justice and sustainability. The problem in this whole debate is best imaged by the consideration that what Brundtland actually assumed, like a natural hand-in-hand going of justice concerns and sustainability, naturally is not as such. So a lot of sustainability debates, as Hopwood explains, are masking injustice in the society. And when we look at the Brundtland report, the Brundtland report in particular refers to intergeneration justice, but not intra-generation justice, which would mean distributive justice within the existing society, but rather focused on the idea of future societies or future generations which should have the same chance as we do now. And the other side, actually, which we are going to see in the mapping of sustainability later on, is that social justice concerns are often used to mask environmental damage or environmental problems. One of the best examples is the Soviet Union, which basically blamed the capitalism and the social injustice of capitalism for the environmental damage, by at the same time doing at least the same or even more damage to the biological environment there, but prohibiting debates about it, as the course of argumentation was simply rooted to the debate about capitalist injustice leading to environmental damage. At the end of the 80s, and you can see already by reading out the principles, the spirit of Rio in 1992, which actually brought sustainable development into the center of the international political debate. Houghton actually developed 5 equity principles in the context of sustainable development. So SD stands for sustainable development here. And as you can see, he goes beyond the intergenerational equity of the Brundtland report and claims that there is more, like geography and so forth. And this also marks an edging point in the discussion about like how to treat environment and what is environment, as we have discussed earlier. So rather a social constructivist viewpoint versus a more biological driven understanding of the concept. Center of the whole debate, and quite important also for future discussions, is the concept of weak and strong sustainability. It is not to be understood as like weak equal bad and strong equal good, but rather as two different viewpoints of one and the same problem set. The problem is actually putting into question the Promethean view, which I have introduced in the beginning, and contesting it with the fact that resources in the world are finite. So the question, and therefore deeply rooted in the debate about development theories, is whether the contemporary way of development is able to give an answer to the problem of sustainability. And weak sustainability actually argues in terms of the Promethean view. So the way of like technological advancement will enable us to substitute the loss of ecosystem services, to speak very generally. So ecosystem services are actually the services provided by the world, and like fresh air, fresh water, and all the changes coming from environmental damage basically can be overcome if technological progress is just going far enough, or is driven or put in the right direction. Strong sustainability, in opposite, was actually a concept developed in critique on weak sustainability, and argues that there are services or there are constellations which cannot be replaced by the technological progress or the technological optimism of the representatives of weak sustainability falls short when we speak about water cycle, ozone layer, photosynthesis, and so forth. So there are processes in the world, in the biological world, which are much more complex than they can be easily modeled by technological progress. And this brings us to the map. You can find it on page 41 of this paper that you find on top. And what Hopwood and his colleagues try to do is to give an understanding of sustainability or sustainable development perspectives, and also link this to several organizations. I'm going to pick some to explain the constellation, as I think that a lot of these names you are seeing there are actually referring back to what we have seen in the debate on the worldviews on sustainability, as well as in terms of representatives for one specific development theory. Representatives in terms of like people that favor, or like groups, organizations that favor a particular understanding of development. So what we see are two axes, and one axe, as indicated here, refers to the economic and justice concerns. So they see equality and increasing socioeconomic well-being as one angle to measure sustainable development. And as a second one, this is a little more complex, the concerns on the biological environment, but this goes in three steps. So you have no concern, and you have a techno-centered viewpoint, and this at the end of the X is the eco-centered. And between these two axes, the organizations and beliefs and approaches are located. Whether this is a good or a bad way to do it, we may discuss later on critically. Basically, there is one gray layer, and this is actually like covers the group of beliefs and organizations that are concerned with both, that focus on the environment and the socioeconomic issue with different weight in one or the other, but they have both in the umbrella of considerations. And there are those which are outside of this gray layer, and these are leaning either to one or the other and do not take the other concept into consideration as much. So there is the first concept, which no one is really surprised of, the World Bank as an international organization, deeply rooted in that what they call the status quo. So you see these pinned lines which distinguish between status quo, reform, and transformation. And in the status quo, the World Bank is right in the middle. So the World Bank actually carries the traditional elements of the strategy to foster growth, macroeconomic stability, market-friendly reforms, and these are going to reduce poverty, and later on also therefore balances the problems of sustainability. The second group are the ecological modernizers. You may not know a lot about ecological modernization. Ecological modernization is a concept that was developed in the 80s and became famous in the 90s. It refers to a specific idea of incentives to the market in order to bring forward the idea of sustainability and make it part of the political agenda. Ecological modernization is also very prominent in Germany, as at Environmental Policy Research Center in Berlin. Some prominent representatives of this path have done research for several years. It is contrasted from the beginning as well. So John Dreisig, for example, argued that that this is this like way of supporting ecological modernization is actually more money for the business and changing not much in particular. And Martinez Alia argued that there's less concern for equity, justice, and human well-being. The World Conservation Strategy, as you can see, started outside of this frame of considering both, and later on moved into the debate in 1991 of considering social justice, and first there have been more eco-centered. And this brings us to some examples which are outside of this balance of the two, and these are like the eco-fascists, about which we have also spoken in the beginning of the seminar. And the eco-fascist movement actually has an ecological approach to explain mankind's society in a social Darwinist way. And accusations have also come to Garrett Hardin's Tragedy of the Common to be close to this idea. This comes due to this "we are living in one boat" theory, saying like we are all sitting in the same boat, we must survive somehow, which does not take into consideration that there's a social inequality in the world which makes people differently exposed to the impacts. The other one is deep ecology. Deep ecology, we have also heard already, is one of the concepts, part of the bioenvironmentalist view. Their primary concern is naturally the biological environment, while human needs come very much second in terms of we need to save the biological conditions for surviving, whereas the practical needs of today can be considered or must be considered later on. And the socialist cornucopians are actually the classical Marxists. as Marx himself has not taken nature into consideration properly, at least not in his theoretical writing, the socialist cornucopians believe in the social transformation, and overcoming social inequality is going to provide the basis for finding a solution to environmental problems. But basically, theories from this angle don't worry a lot about the contemporary problem, as they see it as part of the economic injustice of the system we are living in today. For no wonder, we see mainstream environmental groups like Friends of the Earth, WWF, and so forth, in the middle of the reform. They try and they aim for a change of the political agenda. They do lobbying on behalf of both social inequality and ecological consideration, but they do so in a way to not actually questioning the system as a full one, but to criticize the way how the system is managed today. And this brings us to Schumacher, who was like the first one who referred in critics to the way how the economy is managed, by referring to that what we have read later on by Murphy, sociology as if nature did not matter. One of his main claims has been economy as if people mattered. So this was the idea, to change the economy in a way that the people would matter, and then you would have a radical change in the way how people reproduce environmental goods. And the area of transformation we see prominently, and this is the oldest viewpoint, the indigenous or South movement, which actually use a lot of terms which are known now in the sustainable development debate, but they also used other terms which are culturally driven. The interesting part of their approach is that they, contrary to all the others, provide an alternative in terms of the old way or the traditional way indigenous people lived as an alternative of living in harmony with nature and society. The ecofeminist movement is divided into a more mainstream and a more critical one, and criticizes basically that the capitalism detaches production and social life from nature through gender and class, which is the critical view, whereas the more mainstream view would rather argue on the closeness of a woman to nature due to their biological constitution, the ability to give birth, for example. The eco-socialists actually have lean more towards Friedrich Engels than to Marx, and they try in a metaphysical way to combine the environment and the injustice, and see the environmental crisis as the center point for analyzing the social injustice and understanding the social injustice of today. Last but not least, this brings us to environmental justice, which is going to be our topic of next year. And environmental justice is located between reform and transformation. This is so because environmental justice has a reform-oriented fraction and a more transformative fraction, and meaning you have environmental justice activists which would more belong to the institutionalist viewpoint that we have discussed as worldviews on sustainability, and some which belong more to the social greens. And to distinguish the two is one of the important things that need to be done as part of research in the field, to understand that not everything what reads environmental justice at the end is the same concept of environmental justice. Last but not least, I want to conclude with that what Hopwood had argued and his colleagues, and also give some ideas from my side which you may comment on. So the central part of the conclusion by Hopwood is that there is a status quo view as that dominates policies, and that this viewpoint uses phrases of sustainable development to do as they always did, like profit-driven, market-oriented policy making. And they assume in 2005 that future is likely to be dominated by more radical views, which we can think about whether this is true or not. I think when we look at it right now, I have some doubts that their prognosis is true, and I think a lot of these thoughts are more driven by that what would be wishful thinking. What is true is that we could see that the problem of sustainable development is mixed up by unrevealed different discourse patterns. And this leads us to the problem that we need to understand the concepts behind policies in order to understand what kind of sustainable development concept the authors of policies or researchers are carrying. There are 4 criteria as developed by John Dreisack in his article on critical policy analysis, and this is basically the criticism of technocratic and accommodative analysis, so looking at the systems which are involved in defining one or the other concept, the explication of dominant and suppressed meanings, the identification of agents of impairment, and finally the identification of communicative capacities and standards. Having said this, I hope I could summarize that what we have heard and like somehow bring it together to that map that we had in the text. I believe that the distinctive point of looking at environmental problems from an academic perspective is mainly a discourse issue, and understanding the discourses helps us understanding the social reality or social environment of the people or those which are doing the research. And yeah, based on this, I think research can reveal a lot of what we are facing today as environmental problems and as environmental justice problems. Yeah, you find a list of sources here as well worth looking into, and might be interesting for all those which are interested in the diversity of sustainable development discourses. So now I'm at the end of my short introduction. I hope I haven't strained the time too long. So I'm, yeah. First of all, thank you for your attention. And now I'm going to introduce Dr. Stefan Cetkovic. Stefan is a political scientist who has long year experience in research and teaching. He was teaching at Free University of Berlin, University of Erfurt, and teaching at the International Summer University of Free University. He is involved in policy consulting and is a policy advisor since years. Right now, working for Clarion, which is a renewable energy and energy efficiency consulting company based in Berlin, but doing research on the international scale, comparing different countries. His main research interest is on comparative climate and energy policy and politics. He furthermore is the founder of the Belgrade-based think tank Institute for Green Economic Development. He has a long list of publications, publications in particular in peer-reviewed journals such as Climate Policy and Journal of Environmental Policy and Planning. So give a very warm welcome to Stefan, and by now I'm already handing over to him.
Okay, hi everybody. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Your camera is not on.
Okay, wait. Now, right?
Yeah.
Can you hear me properly? And I guess my camera is working now, so people are confirming, so that's good. Okay, hi everybody, also from my side. Thank you, Götz, for this kind introduction. So it was very informative now what Götz was talking about. So I will try to so I can link my presentation to the theoretical debate Götz presented in the class, but also what you talked in the class previously in the previous sessions. But I will try to give you sort of like a bit of more political science perspective to the problem, but also to give you some empirical evidence that we can then use also to reflect upon theoretically. So basically, as Götz pointed out, the topic of my presentation will be varieties of sustainability and varieties of capitalism, the case of renewable energy development. And what I will try basically to do in this presentation is to sort of like try to put renewable energy development in the context of sustainable development, to see what renewable energies mean for sustainable development on the one hand, but on the other hand, I also will show you some empirical evidence about how renewable energies develop in different countries, focusing on Europe. And then we can use this theoretical insights and empirical evidence and to see what it means for sustainable development, and also how can we, using these theoretical tools of sustainable development theory, how can we assess the progress the countries are making in developing renewable energies. Okay, so basically this is the key points of my presentation. So I will start with highlighting two key arguments that I will try to make in the presentation. The second point will be where I will try to show you why renewable energies are important for achieving sustainable development goals, but also we'll try to point out some risks and challenges that renewable energies bring about in terms of the impact on the environment, but also impact on other socioeconomic issues. And then I will move to sort of like applying a bit of more political science concepts, trying to show how one can measure sustainability of renewable energy development in different countries, and particularly to show you why national political economic institutions are important for understanding why different countries develop renewable energies differently. And then I will conclude with some final conclusions and remaining questions that I will try to raise, and then hopefully we'll have a fruitful debate afterwards. Okay, so basically the key arguments that I will try to make in the presentation. So the first argument is really sort of a classic political science argument, where I will be basically trying to show you that national political economic institutions matter for promoting renewable energies in a sustainable manner. And then here we have sort of like two key factors that we identified in the research. One factor is plurality of the political system. So we basically argue, we'll try to show it then afterwards based on the concrete case studies, that sorry, we're just looking, there were some changes in the here on to the right side. So plurality of the political system is very important in order for new technologies, for new issues, new goals to come on the political agenda. So that's one factor. And the second factor is something we called, or something which this Varieties of Capitalism literature calls strategic coordination. And strategic coordination essentially means a coordination between government actors, so decision makers, and non-state actors who are important for achieving certain goals, such as industry, finance, society, research institutes, academia. So if the country has this mechanism of coordinating activities of different groups of actors, then they are better capable of promoting renewable energies. So that's basically one argument. The first argument. The second argument is sort of like a more normative in a sense, and basically I would try to show that renewable energy development can substantially advance sustainable development goals, and even sort of like lead to reshaping or rethinking the socioeconomic relations, but also try to make this claim that important obstacles remain, obstacles that are related to our current political economic system remain, which sort of like hinder the possibility of utilizing this potential of renewable energies in a full manner. Okay, so before I now go further, I will just have one slide, basically try just to make sure that we all know what we're talking about when we say renewable energy sources. And here I would like to ask you if you can maybe just quickly type in the chat if you know any renewable energy technologies, or what kind of renewable energy technologies are familiar to you. Would be just interesting to know if we have a sort of like a common understanding of potential renewable energy technologies that are out there. Okay, Marcus said photovoltaic, solar power, right? So photovoltaic is basically part of the solar power technology. It is a technology used to produce electricity, using solar power to produce electricity. Marcus says windmills, so wind power. Dominic said, okay, offshore wind parks, very good. Marika said biomass. Kevin pointed out geothermal, okay. Very good. Okay, so you have pretty good understanding and an overview of renewable energy technology, so that's completely right. So you're all right. These are all potential technologies. If you live in Germany, you'll probably be more than familiar with all these different technologies. You can see them basically. You can see them basically everywhere. So renewable energy sources are very briefly or renewable energy technologies are technologies that use natural processes for generating energy. And some of these processes replenish themselves naturally, such as water, wind, sunlight, water waves. And some can relatively fast recover themselves, but require human influence. So we use, for instance, we grow wood to produce biomass for biomass plants. We grow crops to produce biofuels. Biofuels used particularly in the transport sector. And then we have what you already pointed out, these different technologies such as solar PV, which in the form of, for instance, solar PV installations on the roof. We have onshore wind, so wind parks built on the land. We have offshore wind, which are wind parks built on the sea. We have biogas plants, and so on. So this is basically just to make sure we all know what we are talking about, and just also to make a difference between renewable energy sources and why they're so attractive. It's because they use these natural processes, which anyway happen in the nature to generate energy, and are not based on fossil fuels, which are highly polluting and causing diverse environmental problems, including climate change. But we'll come back to that. So now in the next slide, just briefly, these are probably you're all familiar with this image. This is the image of this new 17 Sustainable Development Goals agreed last year. These are the Sustainable Development Goals that should be aimed for until 2030. This is UN goals, and here you can see that there are variety of goals. We have a affordable and clean energy, we have decent work and economy growth, innovation, infrastructure and industry, protection of the life on land, protection of the life on water, or below water, climate action, so actions to combat climate change. There's also another goal to promote responsible consumption and production. So these are all pointed out as a key goal that the global community should aim for. And of course, we can then, if you're interested, we can also raise a question: to what extent are really all these necessary goals for achieving sustainable development, particularly if you think of economic growth. So this is very contested, and also what Götz was talking about. The extent to which really economic growth is necessary for achieving sustainable development, and whether economic growth actually is or this understanding that we need to grow internally is actually a obstacle to achieving a genuine sustainable development. Okay, so these are the new sustainable development goals based on this Agenda 2030. And then let's see now how renewable energies can. I will just highlight a few of the sustainable development goals, basically just to show you what role renewable energy technologies can play in achieving these goals. And the first goal is very straightforward. It says we should strive for affordable and clean energy. And this is, of course, pretty self-explanatory. We have today 1.2 billion people without access to electricity. We have this quite widespread problem of, in some countries particularly, of the energy poverty related to large costs of importing energy sources, particularly fossil fuel-based sources, oil and gas. So these costs are related to costs of household, but also cost of the countries, because of the fact that oil and gas are concentrated in few countries, and essentially the rest of the world needs to import these resources to be able to power its economy. And here, of course, renewable energies are sort of like a natural solution to deal with this problem. On the one hand, because renewable energy sources have low environmental impact, or they have lower environmental impact than fossil fuel-based sources. But on the other hand, what is also important is that we witness a rapidly decreasing cost of this new renewable energy technologies. And this is very exciting. This is the next slide, which I wanted to show you, where you can basically see the scale of technological improvement and cost reductions in some technologies. Here on this slide, you see basically the development of the feed-in tariff for solar photovoltaic in Germany, which basically shows the amount of money German consumers have to pay for every kilowatt hour produced by solar power plants. And in 2005, this amount of money was 43 cents per kilowatt hour. So every kilowatt hour produced by solar power plants was charged 43 euro cents. This was 12 years ago or 11 years ago. In 2015, so 10 years after, this price dropped to 8.7 cents per kilowatt hour. And even now, the new options for these large solar power plants in Germany and Denmark show that actually the price of or the cost of solar electricity is decreasing further. So we have now the new auctions are showing that the prices were around even slightly below 5 cents, so between 5.5 cents and 7 cents per kilowatt. So this is a massive reduction of cost, which basically makes these technologies more affordable to broader population. And here to the right of this chart, you also see the cost, the scale of cost, depending on the technology, and also depending on the location for onshore wind. you see basically the onshore wind and solar PV are practically cost competitive to fossil fuel based plants such as coal plants or gas fired power plants. So this is basically showing that that the world, or particularly developed countries, are making large progress in reducing the cost of new technologies. Okay, so the next slide is here pointed out as the Sustainable Development Goal of climate change, so combating climate change, but also reducing environmental and health impacts. And here again, the fossil fuel-based energy sector is the main driver of climate change. And essentially, as a result, in order to combat climate change, we actually need a structural transformation of the energy sector. And this structural transformation of the energy sector is basically will need to go in the direction of renewable energy sources, because we have few other options. We have renewable energy sources, we have nuclear power as a rather CO2 neutral energy source, but the energy source which is connected to other environmental problems and risks. So basically, we are left with renewable energy technologies as a sort of like the cornerstone of our future sustainable energy systems. And of course, here there are also some threats. Renewable energy sources, development of renewable energy sources can also have an impact on underwater ecosystems. If you think about hydropower, but also if you think about these large offshore wind parks, which is a new fastly developing technology, they all have this two technology. Particularly, can have a negative impact on underwater ecosystems if assessments and project development is not done in a proper way. And then we have also impact on animals. Example of onshore wind and birds, quite often example which is often pointed out as a sort of like an argument against onshore wind, which is the argument that onshore wind is development of onshore wind threatens the animals and particularly birds. And then we have also resource extraction. So the fact that renewable energy sources are also technologies, or renewable energy technologies are based on, in order to develop these technologies, to produce them, we need certain resources, right? And particularly problematic here, these rare earth metals, which are used to produce solar PV panels, but also they're used in producing wind turbines. And the extraction of these resources is also controversial from environmental point of view, but also from the perspective of socioeconomic conditions. So these are all kind of like a potential risks, and that needs to be taken into account, just to make sure that you understand that actually development of every technology is based on certain resource use, and every technology, human-made technology, has some impact on the environment, which we need to take into consideration. And then finally, just to mention the socioeconomic goals of sustainable development, so the goal of decent work and economic growth, industrial innovation, infrastructure development, reduction of inequality, sustainable communities, responsible consumption and production. And here again, new renewable energy technologies can provide some answer to these challenges. So renewable energy technologies can and are now actually in several countries use the main or major driver of economic growth, job creation, and also particularly technological development. So I pointed out here the example of the wind sector in Germany. So the wind industry in Germany has created so far, according to some estimates, 150,000 jobs in Germany only. So this is, of course, we can then afterwards in a discussion try to put this in a more like a global perspective, because we're talking about Germany, highly developed, industrialized country. But still, this shows that the countries can use these technologies to develop the economy and to generate new jobs and new revenues. And also, renewable energy technologies are most of them small-scale, decentralized technologies. They can provide citizens and communities an opportunity to take active part in the energy system in terms of investing in their own projects, producing energy, particularly electricity, by themselves, and also generating profits out of it. So, and we see this phenomena in many countries, including Germany and Denmark, where you have lots of these energy cooperatives, renewable energy projects, which are owned by citizens and by communities, which can then potentially lead to increasing the sustainability and resilience of communities. It can also positively affect the lifestyle of people, but they can, by producing their own energy, they can become more aware of the whole life cycle of the project, all impacts of the project, and so they can maybe rethink their own lifestyles. And through these small-scale projects owned by citizens, we can also achieve some more just wealth distribution away from large energy utilities in the direction of communities and individual citizens. But here again, there are also some risks and threats. So, basically, formulated as who benefits and who pays. Who benefits in terms of whether we see this example of energy communities, citizens investing in these power plants and then benefiting out of it, or whether we see, as we see the trend in some countries where basically only large energy utilities are reaping the benefits of this process of developing and implementing new renewable energy technologies. And on the other side, it's also the question who pays, because renewable energy technologies, at least in the short term, they lead to the higher electricity prices, energy prices. They require higher upfront investments. So the question is how you distribute then the cost of this, whether you put everything on small households, or whether the industry also takes a share in basically paying for the development of these technologies. Okay, so this is kind of like a try to just to put briefly renewable energies in the perspective in terms of how it can contribute to sustainable development goals, and why renewable energies are important for sustainable development. And I will try to, based on some recent research, and which I did with several colleagues of mine, where we look at where we basically try to see try to basically explain why renewable energy develop differently in different countries, and also try to come up with some sort of like a framework that will help us analyze and conceptualize different forms of renewable energy development across Europe. So we basically focus here on these two papers which we published, one paper in climate policy and the other paper which was published for United Nations University UNIWIDER, which is also the paper we published there is now will be translated as a chapter of a book that should appear next year. So we focus on Europe, but we sort of provided lots of theoretical content that also can be used to measure developments in other countries. So basically, what we did here is first, as I said, the basic idea was to understand how renewable energies develop in different countries, and to explain why is this the case. And in order to do that, we had to come up with some sort of like a framework to measure renewable energy development. We were thinking about what is it a sustainable renewable energy development? What are the key elements of every renewable energy progress? And then we came up with this kind of like three main elements. So the first element is domestic market creation, which basically means that which is measured by the share of renewable energy sources in the country's energy mix. So basically, when the countries implement new projects, when they increase the share of renewable energies, this will lead to is related to the creation of the domestic market. And this is one important element which is particularly important for combating climate change, so that the countries replace their fossil fuel-based energy sources with renewable energy sources. So this is one element. The second element is industrial policy. So we basically consider here also the fact that developing new technologies and transitioning towards renewable energy-based energy systems will also require countries to generate new jobs and to produce new innovations in order to replace these jobs that will be lost in the old sectors, but also to use this process so they could technologically modernize their systems. So this industrial policy is the second element, and the third element is civic participation. So we also, as I mentioned previously, that renewable energies offer great potential for small decentralized energy production, which is owned by citizens and communities. So we basically also look at this aspect of to what extent are citizens involved in renewable energy development in different countries, measured by the number of community-owned projects, decentralized projects, and also projects which are owned by individual citizens, like households putting simply solar power plants on their roof. And so this was our framework to analyze renewable energy development, and then we had to measure renewable energy development, and then we kind of like had to have another framework which will try to help us explain or conceptualize different political economic institutions, and then to this aim we employ this concept, which is a very interesting concept of, and very popular, of course, the concept of varieties of capitalism. I don't know if you've heard of this concept. Maybe you can, for those of you who already heard about the concept, maybe you can just give a sign so that I just have an idea of the level of knowledge and awareness about the concept among you. So if you heard about the concept, if you know something about it, just confirm or raise your hand just to know it. Okay, so we have one person who is basically familiar more or less with the concept. Thank you. So I won't have time now to go much deeper into the concept, but this concept basically conceptualizes different forms of, so it basically identifies ideal types of political economic institutions at the national level, and then make some hypotheses in terms of how different models of political economies, of national political economies and their institutions, how they impact the economic development and technological development of these countries. And this concept was developed by Hall and Soskitz in their book from 2001, and they basically came up with these two main models of economies. One is coordinated market economy. Prominent examples are Germany, Denmark, Scandinavian countries like Sweden, and also countries like Austria, for instance. And this model of capitalism is characterized by an active role of the state. So you have a closed state-market labor coordination, strong role of labor union, but also coordination between the state and the industry. And then you also, in terms of the technological development of these countries, they place more emphasis on incremental innovations, so like a stepwise development of existing sectors and technologies. So this is one model, and the other model is liberal market economies, which you can find in the UK, US, Australia, Ireland, and there we see more like a limited state role, understanding that the economy should be fully based on like a market base and price signals, that states should not be involved in promoting industries, in promoting new sectors, but rather leave to the market to do this. And there we also introduce the technological development. We see here more focus on rapid innovation. So it's basically not about slowly incrementally developing industrial base which you have, but rather sort of like leaving to the market, to the private investors to search for opportunities that will reap the largest benefits. We in our two papers we drew upon this this conceptualization. There's two ideal models of capitalism, but we also, because we wanted to look also at the Central East Europe, we also included this another model of capitalism, which is called dependent market economies. And dependent market economy is basically a term which was coined to describe the economies in Central East Europe. And basically, it says that the Central East European economies have developed, so although they also vary among each other, that they share some common features. And these common features are rather different from these two models which you already have from the developed Western world. As I said, this new model of capitalism is like a term, dependent market economies. And it's called dependent market economies because these economies are highly dependent on foreign investments, on foreign companies, on foreign technologies. So here we have a mixed and non-transparent state role, because most of these countries are in the transformation process from the state socialism towards some sort of a market-based economies. So its uses are weak, quite often non-transparent. The role of the state is rather weak in terms of the ability to promote the economy and new technologies. We have the dependence on foreign capital, on foreign companies, and then we also have little domestic innovation. So there is like a little involvement of domestic industries, little domestic investments in innovation, little involvement of domestic scientific and educational actors in the economic processes. And so we looked at these three models of capitalism and tried to see whether we can link different developments of renewable energy with these three different models of capitalism. So in other words, whether these three models of capitalism develop renewable energy sectors differently. And basically, here are our key findings. So what we found out is basically that we were able to confirm our hypothesis, which was that coordinated market economies are better equipped to develop renewable energy sources than liberal market economies, particularly than dependent market economies, because of this better capacity of the state to or the tradition of the state's role in terms of promoting new sectors, but also the existence of mechanisms to collaborate and coordinate actions between the state and the non-state actors. And what we basically came up with is that Germany, but we also look at Denmark as the examples of coordinated market economies, are leaders across all these three dimensions which we looked at. So they have the largest increase in renewable energy sources over the recent years, and they developed the most competitive industries, created the largest number of jobs, but they were also able to include the citizens in this process. So you have the highest number of energy cooperatives and individually owned and community-owned projects in these two countries. And here you see that basically just some factors that contributed to this, or some elements which describe this development. But here again, as I already said in the first slide about this key arguments that I want to make. Here, basically, we explain this development. So, explain the fact that Germany and Denmark are the leaders in this across these three dimensions. We explain this by these two factors, which I already mentioned. On the one hand, you have state market coordination, and on the other hand, you have this more pluralist political environment. You have in Germany federal structure, strong local governments, very strong Green Party, vibrant civil society. In Denmark, the situation is a bit different. Denmark is more unitary organized country, but it has a long tradition of decentralized energy production, and that's why this like a tradition of energy being produced at the local level enable this country to or create the space for new innovations and new technologies to be embraced by society, and then also through this state market coordination to be developed in new competitive economic sectors. So this is about coordinated market economies, basically showing that they are better equipped and that they in practice really are more advanced in promoting renewable energies in so like a balanced, sustainable manner. And then when we look at the liberal market economies, we focus on the UK, and the UK has been a typical example of how liberal market economies go about promoting renewable energies. So for a long time, UK relied on price-based policies, market-based mechanisms, but then at some point they also realized, well, this will not bring us much further. So they also then introduced some state-based support mechanisms, which were used by countries like Germany and Denmark. And then they also try to enhance, because they realize that there is the state industry finance, particularly collaboration in the country, is rather weak. So they try to enhance this, particularly when it comes to offshore wind, which is the most the main renewable energy sector in the UK, or the fastest growing sector. They kind of focus on offshore wind and then try to develop this coordination between state and non-state actors. And what we also saw in the UK, that decentralization of the government provides like a positive influence for developing renewable energy sources. This is particularly the case for Scotland. Scotland, because they acquired more power to influence energy policy, they are now the major driver of renewable energy growth in the UK, because the UK government at the central level is not really interested in promoting different renewable energy sources, but Scotland is using this power which it got to make the case for developing technologies, renewable energy technologies, particularly onshore and offshore wind. And just briefly, when we look at this dependent market economies, we look at the Central Eastern Europe, and we saw there basically what we expected. You have in some countries have witnessed rapid but one-sided and highly unstable, externally driven renewable energy development. What's what we saw in countries like Romania and Bulgaria. They over 2 years they developed or they opened their borders for renewable energy investments, and this created sort of like a disruption of the entire system. And then they basically decided to abolish the entire support scheme, and now they are in the process of even considering whether to invest any more money in or to create any kind of framework to support these technologies. And the same happens for solar PV in Czech Republic. So what we see there is basically that the countries, the development is externally driven, which is typical for dependent market economy. There is little domestic innovations and research and development, and there is also little citizens involvement. So we have not been able to find any strong evidence about energy communities and energy and renewable energy projects owned by citizens and communities. And this is just briefly the recent trend. What we see now is basically that even Germany is now under pressure to move to leave its state-based support scheme and to move more towards market-based policy instruments. And now the large energy utilities in Germany are also trying to play a more stronger role, which is also important for, we can also discuss that, for sustainability of the entire process. In the UK, again, UK tried to invest some efforts in promoting these technologies, but there is strong emphasis on a quick cost rate reductions and large-scale projects, so not really empowering citizens, but rather focus on large-scale projects, particularly offshore wind, but also they are considering building new nuclear power plants. And the private market economies, after this shock that some of these countries witnessed, they are now most of them basically abolished their support schemes for renewable energy sources, and we still don't know what will happen in these countries in terms of the future growth. So this is basically kind of very brief findings of our studies, and just two key conclusions. Basically, repeating again the two main arguments. So basically, what we were able to show in these two papers, that political economic institutions matter, that renewable energy development proceeds largely along the already established national policy patterns and comparative advantage. So basically, the countries that already have this strong tradition of developing new sectors, new technologies involving citizens, then they are naturally also better in promoting renewable energy technologies, and the countries which do not have these capacities, that they are struggling with this process or with these renewable energy goals. And on the other hand, the conclusion is also that renewable energy sources hold considerable potential. I pointed out this element of involving citizens and decentralizing the energy system, but international and international structures of power inequality continue to pose the barrier for really utilizing the potential of renewable energy technologies for developing in a more sustainable way. So this is basically briefly what I wanted to present you. I hope I'm not overwhelmed you with too many information, too many insights, but also just the final slide, which I thought we could use to have some discussion about this, about what I presented, and also about what related to also what you learned in the course. We're basically trying to some of the questions would be, for instance, what kind of approach to sustainable development do we see when it comes to renewable energy development in different countries? Can we characterize this as simply a status quo, or we see some sort of a reform happening there? Also, the question of how can renewable energies contribute more strongly to transforming our societies towards a more genuine, sustainable development. So this will be interesting also for me to hear from you in terms of how you could imagine renewable energies developing differently to the benefit of social, economic, and environmental aspects. And also the question is, of course, which is also related to this whole debate about sustainability: can renewable energies power growing capitalist economies? So the question whether, there's kind of like the goal, which we also see in this Agenda 2030, that we need economic growth to deal with to achieve sustainable development goals. The question is to what extent really you can replace all existing energy power plants with renewable energy plants and continue to fuel this ever-growing economy. And here, for instance, we have the debate in Germany about building wind parks, whether we have enough space and enough public acceptance for basically, if Germany decides to focus on onshore wind as the most cost competitive renewable energy technology, whether we'll have enough space and acceptance of people to replace all or the large part of the fossil fuel based and nuclear based power plants we have now with wind parks. and also related to that, do we need a maybe degrowth? Do we need to rethink our growth-based economic model first before we continue developing renewable energy technologies at a more larger scale? And then also the question is how can we transfer the technology and experience and knowledge we have acquired in the developed world to help global East to embrace this new technology? Because simply by promoting renewable energies in the developed world will not be able to solve our global problems. So we need to have a transfer of technologies and knowledge to enable other countries and basically the global communities to use these technologies. Okay, so basically these are the point that I tried to make in the intended to make in this presentation. I now very much look forward to your inputs and the discussion. Thank you. I would basically now open the floor now for if you have questions, comments. Please feel free to raise your hand and then I will hand over the microphone to you. Is there anybody who would like to raise some points to comment on what we presented today and to give us your input in terms of how you understand all this developments and what's your assessment of it? Okay, we have Marcus. I will try to activate your microphone, and we'll switch.
Hello. I don't know whether you can hear me because I don't hear anything anymore. But my question.
I think you can. I can hear you, so I guess that also everybody can hear you.
Yeah, I would like to ask you whether you are confident that that it's possible to tackle these problems that we have, like climate change, within a profit-orientated economy, in capitalism, and whether it would be enough to make the economy like more greener, or whether it's necessary to change the way of production or the whole economic system.
Okay, Marcus, thank you. Thank you. So raised the most difficult question. I think the question that actually is a kind of like a long-standing, it's a matter of long-standing debate. Well, my personal point of view is that on the one hand, I think it's obvious that we cannot have this growth-based economic model and at the same time hoping for achieving a genuine sustainable development that will maintain our socio-economic system within certain planetary boundaries. So I think that's kind of like a very obvious, and it's something that will definitely the countries will need to deal with. So there's, on the one hand, we need to really that's my personal view, that we need to rethink this entire growth-based and profit-based economic model. But on the other hand, this is also always the question of how because the capitalism has this extreme ability to reinvent itself, and also to survive through different crises. And this cost for reduction, for instance, which I showed you, of renewable energy technologies, this is the result of massive investments, massive involvement of different business actors, financial actors, and the question is, of course, to what extent you can develop these technologies outside of this, so like this capitalist-driven system, which is so good in sort of a channeling so good, maybe it's overstated, but it's like a still rather effective in terms of channeling investments and capital, where there is if you create good conditions, then the capitalism is able to or private actors are able to react to this and develop new technologies. So I would say, just to sum up, that on the one hand we need to rethink this like a growth-based economic model that we have, that all countries are strive for increasing their GDP. But on the other hand, we also need to maintain some sort of capacities, to mechanisms to develop new technologies and to provide proper incentives to come up with a solution that will help us to deal with the problems. I mean, the technology is not the only solution, but it will be an important element in the whole story in terms of transforming our societies technologically, but also culturally. Okay, so that would be my answer to this. If there are any other comments to this question, or if there are further comments on other issues and further questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer it. Or if you have any kind of, I'm particularly interested in your understanding of how you see this, what I presented, and also from what you know about climate change problem and renewable energy problem in Germany, but also in other countries. I suspect that many people here are also coming from different countries other than Germany, or maybe even other than this like a European context. So I would be also more than happy to hear about the experiences from different countries, and also your personal view about the role of renewable energies, but also more broadly about this challenge of sustainable development. Okay, right. So Dominic asked me if I can go back to the slide with the questions. Yeah, I can do this. Thank you. Okay, we have Lisa would like to talk, and I will just mute my microphone and we'll hand over to Lisa.
Okay, thank you very much, Stefan. If I understood you correctly, the key promoters of renewable energies in a sustainable manner is the political plurality, and the strategic coordination between decision makers such as the government and non-state actors. But don't you believe, to have also domestic innovations, that you need some kind of education system that works, or a just education system, or whatever?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question. Well, you need to have, indeed, I mean, this is the necessity for as like one of the main preconditions for having a sustainable, or some kind of sustainable development of renewable energies. And this part of this, maybe I did not emphasize this more clearly, but this is a part of the framework. So basically this strategic coordination also involves the coordination between the industry and the science, between industry and educational institutions, but also between the state so at this axis, state, industry, education, finance. So education plays extremely important role. And particularly in these countries that belong to these coordinated market economies, you have a naturally closer relationship between the educational system, between the research system, and industry, financial sector, society to some extent, and also the decision makers. And this is one of the basic conditions for having success in developing new technologies generally, but also renewable energy technology. And you can also clearly see this, particularly in Germany, where educational institutions and research institutes are closely collaborating with the industry in developing new technologies, but also collaborating with the local governments in coordinating their activities and being able to make sure that they offer scientific answers to the needs of the industry, but also to the needs of society as a whole. So you have this close in coordinated market economies. You have particularly close this link, and which is also a part of the explanation of why you have this success in developing renewable energies in these countries. I don't know if that answers your question, or in case you have any other further comments, be free to. Okay. Very good. Other comments, questions, insights? Okay, we have Dominic. I will switch off mine again and we'll hand over. Dominic, you can speak now. We can hear you, I guess.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I have one question, because I was always wondering why the energy transition didn't work out, because it actually it could have been like really a big change, I guess, but it didn't work. Also, yeah, it didn't really happen. So why do you think that is? That's like something I'd be interested in knowing.
Okay, thank you. Very good question. Well, why didn't it work? I'm not sure if we can say it didn't really work, because we are still in the middle of the process of the transition. Transition is not progressing as fast as possible, and there are, of course, many reasons for it. One of the reasons, of course, what I try to highlight in the presentation are these political economic institutions. And the reason is that in any kind of transformation, you always have established interests, established infrastructural base which you need to change, and you always require not only financial investments in this, but you also require a political leadership to overcome the vested interests, the lobbying, the influence of established actors. So this is one of the when I mentioned as I guess, yeah, this is here on this previous slide. It is international, but also international structures of power and inequality. So this is, you see this in liberal market economies like UK, but also United States, where basically there is this like a policy narrative basically saying, well, the problem is not that big. Global warming, you cannot prove it, and we should not sacrifice our economy growth in order to achieve something which we are not sure about, and which something which we actually don't really at the end maybe even care about it. Because maybe we can deal with it by developing technologies anyway at some point. So this is kind of like one aspect of it, that you have these structures of power, but you have also these structures of inequality. So many people are even in the developed world live in the poverty or struggling to financially, and it's always easy to mobilize this population against these reforms, because these reforms always come with some costs, and if the system cannot redistribute these costs, then these costs are affect most heavily those who are most vulnerable. And then that's why you if you don't have this kind of like a political leadership, if you don't have this institutions that should deal with this problem, you will have a huge resistance. And it's also that people also resist new technologies. Before we had very centralized energy systems, and nobody really knew where this. Only people who were located nearby the nuclear power plants or coal power plants, they knew about it. But the rest of the country or the rest of the world didn't know about. They did not really perceive this as important elements in their life, and they simply consumed the energy produced by these centralized sources. Now, when we make a transition towards renewable energy sources, we'll have more of these technologies at a smaller scale, but more like a widespread. And this, of course, then conflicts with some certain, territorial issues or claims, but it also causes some disruption of the landscape that some people are not ready to accept. So these are kind of like some of the issues that prevents we have this political economic at the national level issue of public acceptance, but also this at a very general level, something which you already or which I mentioned several times, is kind of like a growth-based model of the economy. The economies that are actually focused on short-term growth, and if you're focused on the short-term growth, you won't invest in new technologies that are costly in the short term. You will rather focus on the technologies that are already available and that are more cheaper, at least in this short term. So these are kind of like the tensions and obstacles that the countries are dealing with, and particularly countries that are poorer, countries in Central Eastern Europe. It's kind of like difficult to embrace this idea. So we need to now we are not develop, but we need to invest now in sort of like transforming our energy system, which brings new costs, and if it's not done properly, the whole process, then it creates lots of resistance. So that would be my answer to. Okay, we have Götz. I'll hand over to Götz. So I'll mute my microphone. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to mention that we are the time is actually up. So everyone who wants to ask a question should do now. Or additionally, I can also send Stefan's email around, so if you have further questions later on, I think he's happy to answer questions with regards to his topic. As I do not see any further questions, I would like to conclude our session once again. Thank you very much, Stefan, for taking the time, providing insights in such an interesting topic of applied political science. I hope all of you have enjoyed the session as I did, and I wish everyone happy Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year. Don't forget, our first session is going to be the 4th of January, when Lisa's going to present. In between, after 27th of December, you can reach me and we can arrange consultation hours in the virtual classroom if you feel the need for it. And if not, I wish you all the best and I see you next year. Thank you very much.